Alright, so this is a quick presentation video of my Advanced Games project. It's a quick re-recording due to sound errors before. So right off the bat, I don't have UI in place for swapping between the tank classes, so I'm going to have to do that through the project settings under maps and modes. I experimented with implementing this and never found a way to get it to work, and it was too close to a deadline for me to really mess around with that idea. So I'm going to start with the light tank, and I'll look through the weapons. In fact, what I'm quickly going to do is move this enemy back a little bit, because I am in range of it when I spawn. Alright, so there are 6 weapons in the game. The base turret, which fires standard projectiles, as you would expect, average damage, average cooldown, and 100 rounds. If you drive back over a weapon spawner for the weapon you already have, it refills your ammo to max. Or, yeah, there you go. It just didn't update. There's a laser weapon, which is a hit scan, as you would expect. Obviously, the range is not infinite on it, as it would be a little bit overpowered. But there we go. You go within range and you can hit it. When you have 2 weapons in your inventory already, you'll be prompted to press Y by a print string when approaching a weapon spawner. Obviously, a UI element would be a much better way of doing this, but I didn't get around to implementing that. So I'll quickly swap for the rapid cannon, which is a faster firing weapon with lower damage and less ammo. There's the rapid cannon V2, which is an upgraded variant of that. Fires twice as fast because it's got 2 barrels, same amount of ammo, and slightly less cooldown, obviously, because it fires twice as fast. There's an area of effect weapon, which is called the Wob Shot, through the weapon struct system that I'm using to pass the icons and names and ammo and max ammo values, so it can deal area of effect damage, but obviously the range on it isn't great. The area of effect is quite small. It should have been increased realistically so that the multiple enemies could be hit by it rather than ones that are directly next to each other. And the final weapon is a surface-to-surface missile weapon, which uses a line trace, to get a homing target, and then fires 4 rockets, or 1 rocket for every successful hit from the line trace, which means you can fire a maximum of 4 per trigger pull. There's quite a long cooldown between shots, and it is quite powerful since it's a homing missile, but obviously terrain and things like that can block the hits. Abilities wise, the light tank has a phase shift ability, which means if I quickly restart so that the turret is back, if I go within range and it starts firing at me, I can activate my ability by pressing B, and bullets now pass through me. So the medium tank is slightly slower moving, slightly slower turning, and its ability but deals more damage to compensate for that fact. Bullets can hit each other in the air, but this seems to be a occasional thing. Usually they just pass through each other. So abilities wise, you press B to activate the ability. You can no longer move, but a shot will deal twice as much damage. It has a long cooldown. There's still some print strings in place from bug testing, but otherwise it's pretty much set out completely. Obviously there's no UI animations in place, so the player doesn't really have a reference for when their ability is going to be ready again. Obviously I could have used UMG to achieve this through the animation system, but didn't have the time. The heavy tank is much slower firing, turning, but is much more powerful and has much higher health. Its ability is increased movement, so it can briefly move around quicker. That's just a static mesh that I haven't applied the terrain collision channel to, so that the tank isn't justifying its movement over it. The way that works is there's a line trace being fired from the bottom of the tank every tick, and it is setting the Z position through an R interp of the tank itself to be 30 above it. That prevents a weird clipping issue where the tank would sink into the ground if it stayed still, and then jump back up whenever it started moving. UI wise, you have your tank health displayed in the bottom right corner, ammo in the bottom left. Your secondary weapon is also displayed on the left hand side, and obviously changes as you swap between weapons. Small problem with dropping weapons, however, is that the secondary weapon will be updated to be the weapon you just dropped, but if you cycle weapons when you only have one, it'll update both. There are no managers in the scene. Obviously objectives and things like that are a quite key game aspect, and I did begin to look at implementing these, things like destroying buildings to award score to the player, which would unlock more of the map, or killing more enemies, upgrading weapons, but again didn't get around to doing that. Obviously UI wise, within a certain radius the enemy's health bar will be displayed, and then get closer still and it will target you by turning towards you and firing. It fires every 2 seconds currently, but it deals very minimal damage because it can be quite easily outmaneuvered. The projectile should definitely be quicker. It really makes it easy to take on these enemies. It's pretty much impossible to die to them unless you let them kill you. I will quickly show, however, when the player dies what happens. So if I swap back to the light tank, since it has less health and it'll be quicker, and let the enemy damage ring. There we are. So the tank continues to be fired at as long as it's in range even when dead, but pressing X will update your location back to your respawn point, which is the player start. Obviously a checkpointing system for actual objective levels would make more sense, and would update the player's respawn position so that when you died you don't have to travel the entire map again. In terms of managers, like I said, there's none in the scene, none in the game, but I did begin to make considerations for this, things like bridges that either collapse or like drawbridges that retract so that you can pass them once defeating so many enemies, were ideas that I had but never implemented because of time restrictions. That's about everything that's in the game. The 3 abilities, the 6 weapons, 3 classes, enemies that target you when you're near them, and the UI that updates, and the inventory system to handle that.